use Azure SQL Database, but there is a separate product called Azure Database for MySQL. Okay, so there is already one created, but it's in a different resource group, so we will not bother about that. We will create a new one, right? So then we have this window where it's a flexible server or a WordPress. So it says that like select, okay, what does it say? Yeah, it says select flexible server. So that's what I'm going to do. Okay, so I'm going to use the same resource group, Azure Training, give it a name. It can be anything that you want the server to be. So MySQL to Azure 2020. Okay, so this is available. And MySQL version. Okay, so there are usually two versions, 5.7, 8.0. Most of the applications are still on 5.7, but now like they are moving to 8.0. Okay, so but I need to check which version I have. 8.0. Okay, right, so we can select 8.0 as well. So if I search for MySQL Workbench, right, it says 8.0. So the application that you are going to install for MySQL will be MySQL Workbench. Okay, be moving ahead with after the install steps. Okay, so we have chosen flexible server, right? So it says that fill all the information. So nothing specific that needs to be done here. Like we don't need to change anything. We just need to give it the server name and the resource group. Okay, also, right, so just review and create and click on create. So now we have another option, right, that it's us trying to give me. So it says choose create server without firewall rules option from the above screen. So this is what I am going to choose. Okay, so now it's creating that resource, the SQL Server resource on Azure. Okay, right, so let's look at what the next steps will be. In the meantime, this gets deployed. So in the next steps, you see that we need to go to connection security. So once this gets created, we need to go to connection security and we need to make sure that I can access it. Okay, don't deny public access. Okay, so basically we need to allow public access to this resource before we can start migration, right? So that's what it's trying to tell. Okay, so what do we need to do here? So now after that, the SQL Workbench, right, that I showed you, go to database migration wizard. Okay, yeah, then there are a lot of steps. So first let's get this deployed and then only we can start. Or maybe we will start with the migration process till the time it gets, like wherever we will need that. I think it would work there, right? So okay, so I am at migration wizard, right? And then okay, so it says start migration, right? Start migration option. So that's what I'm going to choose. Okay, so now it has the same structure, right? You need the source, you need the target, right? And it doesn't have any mapping options as such because tables are going to be transferred, right? Mapping is normally when we create the data pipeline. So okay, so for the source we are going to migrate it. For example, today is 26th of June, right? You migrate it from MySQL to Azure, but then the MySQL database will keep on updating, but Azure will still be at 20. Yeah, right. So just to have those like scheduled and automated data transfers, we need to create a data pipeline, right? And in that case, we will need to do a mapping as well. Okay. So what mapping means is that you would do a column to column mapping. Okay. So if you want to transfer data from one table to another, right? The Azure Data Factory, right? Azure Data Factory is used to create those data pipelines. We will be covering that in the next sessions, right? So in that pipeline, we will be basically mapping, okay, this column should transfer data into this column, right? You can have different names. So a migration doesn't need a mapping because it knows what tables and what columns are you migrating, right? But in a data pipeline, the like the Azure server wants to make sure, even if they are different tables, right, or like have different names, column names and all, they should map correctly. Okay. But in our case, it will not be, because we will be creating the data pipeline between the MySQL database on premise and the Azure SQL, which we have migrated, right? So it would have the same structure and the same schema. So we will not have to basically change anything in the mapping. We will just import it and then do it. So maybe in the next section, it would be more clearer once you see how that happens. Okay. Okay. So let's see. Okay. So the resource has been created. Okay, so it has the same structure, right? I just need to copy the server name. So the good thing with MySQL Workbench is that you don't need a data migration assistant, right? As you needed in the case of SQL Server, right? So basically, what we need sits within the like MySQL Workbench, right? So we don't have to use that. We can directly go to database migration wizard, right? So that's equivalent to that, right? Okay, so now what we need to do is we need to select or let me see if do I have a database installed here. So there is a local host. I think I will need to create a new connection because these connections are not working. So copy to clipboard. This is the login name. I'm not sure about the password. Let's see where we can change it. Reset password. Let's use what we have here. Okay, yeah, the password has been reset now. And I'll connect to database. Choose this one. Connect to localhost. add current, right? Okay, we need to allow the IP address here. It should work now. The connection security strings. Okay. I need to give it a name. Stuck right now. Okay, the connection is created. Right, so let's open the editor. SQL Workbench is quite slow today. It usually doesn't take more than a few seconds. Yeah, now this is open. Okay, and okay, so we have two databases in this server. One is this classic models and one is tables, right? So we will be migrating this classic models to our new server that we have created. Okay, so what we will do is go to database, migration wizard, start migration. Right, so the connection is already created. I will click on next. Okay, here I will give the new source, right? And the port will always be 3306, right? We don't need to change the port. Admin AD. We will save the password. Okay, click on next. So if I go back to my Azure, right, and look at the databases, sorry, not this one. We created one in, right, this one, Azure SQL Database 2. Right, if I go into databases, currently you will see there are these system generated tables or databases, but it doesn't have what we are doing, right? We are migrating a user generated database, right? So here, if I go back to my data document, we will see which step we are. So we have done the migration and we have we have started the migration, right? We have selected the source and the target. Now on the fetch schema, there are two options: connect to source, check target. Okay, so there is an error at the target DBMS connection. Okay, so there will be this error because we need to, so whenever an error like this comes up, right, what you need to do is you need to go back to your database, right? And you remember we skipped one step before because this was getting deployed. Yes, so that's why we are getting this error, right? So I need to allow it and I need to add the IP which sent the request and click on save. More than a few seconds, but let me click back. So target is this. It has connected to source. It is still updating, so it might fail again. Here it's updated now. Okay, error handling horizontal connect. A task has failed. Let's try this again, right? Or do we have the right? Okay, password. Let's see. Right. So now it's worked, right? So it would have not taken. So basically, nothing wrong. It was just that we started before, like Azure was done finishing the implementation, right? So that's why we got the error again. Now it has connected to the source. It has checked the target connection and it's good with it, and it has retrieved the schema list. So now it's asking us which database you want to migrate. Okay, so I will be migrating classic models, as I told you, right? Everything else is we don't need. We will be only working on this one database migration. So it has connected to source, post processing. Okay, yeah. So it has done all these things. So now let's look at. So it has a lot of steps. We don't need to do a lot of things, right? Yeah, just click on next. In all the like object migration things, we just need to click on next, right? So in manual editing as well, target creation as well, schema, create result. Yeah, so it has created schema, it has created the target results, then the data transfer setup, right? Even here we just need to click next, and now it's preparing the data copy information, counting the number of rows and copying the database now. So now the transfer step has started, right? So one by one it will copy all these tables. So if you see here, okay, so the migration report is here and the migration is finished. So if we go back to our database, right? So this is our SQL server that we created, and if I go to databases, I should now see classic models, right? And we can there is an editor view for this. No. Okay, right. So if we want to see the tables and all within the database that we have migrated, we can simply create a connection in MySQL Workbench of the Azure SQL database, right? Azure MySQL database. So if you remember, like when we were doing it for SQL Server, we got a lot of errors, right? And only two of the tables were migrated, right? Because we only selected one schema, right? And in here we did not do that, right? Because it was a small database, so we transferred everything, and it went perfectly, right? So there were no missing tables or views or anything. Okay, I need to give it a name. So new Azure SQL connection. Okay, right. So I need to just open it in the SQL editor window. Okay, and look at this, like to look at the tables, right, or the databases, you need to select the schema from here, right? And you can just, so here you would see customer, employee, office, so all the tables were transferred, right? And you can just select number of rows to see the data was successfully transferred. Okay. No, it doesn't have a query editor. So for SQL Server, it has a way, like we can directly connect it to Power BI, right? So it says visualize your SQL data in Power BI. That can be done, right? I will show you. This is also interesting. Have you worked with Power BI before? Oh, not as a developer. Okay. So I have a lot of Power BI experience as well, right? I am certified with Power BI. So yeah, that's correct. So the good thing is, like, now it has directly established a connection, right? And so normally what would happen is, if we open a blank Power BI table, right, we will have to get the data, fetch the data, and do all those things. But in this case, because we opened it directly from Azure, right, so it knew which credentials, or like which database we are trying to access. It's still asking for credentials. What I would do is, I will use the database credentials that we just created. So admin AD, and this should work. Yeah, so here you see all the tables, right, in our database. So you can quickly select everything and click on transform data. So Power BI has its own ETL, right? So which is Power Query, where you can make data transformations, or you want to filter down data. So all those things can happen in the Power Query mode. And once you are happy with the changes that you have done, right, you can simply load that data on the Power BI dashboard and then play around with it and create beautiful insights. And basically that's the whole purpose, right? Why, like, there are two reasons that we data engineers are here, right? We want to provide data for analysis and for data science purposes, right? So this is one, you use like the final product that the user will be interested in, right? So I will just click on close and apply. I won't give you like how to do things in Power BI, because that will be a lot of overhead for you right now. But it would, like, I would suggest that you should also learn how to create basic reports in Power BI, right? Because that will add a lot more value to you, right? And like, your skill set will be valued more if you know how to use Power BI. Right, correct. So the migration is successfully done with like in this case. Now in, say, the next session, what we will be doing is, we will be basically seeing that, okay, so like as I told you, right, we have migrated data from both SQL Server and MySQL, but what about creating a pipeline, right? So there are two concepts that I want you to learn which are regarding pipeline. So basically you should just brush up on it, because creating a pipeline is a lot more complicated, Mohammed. Okay, so it involves like a concept called continuous data capture. Okay, so continuous data capture, right? So this is, I will be giving you change data capture, right? So not continuous, change data capture. So basically it captures any or all changes, right? And then there is another concept called CI/CD pipeline. Okay, so just want you to be familiar with this, because you will be hearing these terms, like, or you will be using these things a lot if you want to be an Azure data engineer, right? So basically what is CI, what is CD, like what's the difference, right? So all these things. So maybe I will quickly share these as well with you. And do you think that you will be able to like complete both these activities by like before our tomorrow's call. I mean the SQL Server and MySQL both. Okay. Yeah. So right. So, and it's good that right now you are only like training and not working on a separate task, right? So you can devote your time to this. Okay. So these are the two links that I want you to go through, and just let me know what you don't understand, and we can discuss that tomorrow. And I will also, yeah. No, I'm just saying that I'm also sharing this to you on email. Okay, because this will help you in the steps to do, and you can, like, it doesn't have the steps to download MySQL Workbench, so you can do that. That's not a problem. Okay, yeah. What you were saying something? Yes. So what? Like, I will just give you a small review of what we are going to do. Okay, so let me see which resource group I have the data factory in. I think this one, shop display, right? The data factory, right? So I think the fact setup is based on SQL Server to Azure SQL migration. But the good thing is that in a single data factory instance, we can migrate data multiple sources to multiple sources. So we don't have to create different data factory instances for yeah. Yes, exactly. So you don't need different data factory instance for more pipelines. Okay, so if I could show you, okay, so there are two pipelines here. So pipeline one is, okay, so yeah, right. So here you see there is this copy data in like running on within this pipeline. So this is like the only thing that is running, right? Later on, what would happen is you will have copy data, then we will like move to Databricks as well, right? Where I will show you how we can make ETL changes, or we can modify data using Python notebooks, and we can add that to the pipeline as well, right? Because anything that we do, right, in the whole process needs to be a part of the pipeline, because if it's not, then that process will just stay there and it will not update. Okay, so even it can be a data transfer, it can be transformation, or anything that we do, we need to make it a part of pipeline and basically join them together, right? So like here you see that we have the source. Okay, so that is a SQL server on premise. Okay, and then we have the sink is the target, which is the Azure SQL, and then the mapping that I was telling you, right? So you see here it's asking that, okay, do you want to map employee ID to employee ID or any other column, right? So you have an option here. The reason is that the way normally businesses use these or these migrations or these data pipelines is that they will have multiple databases, right? So normally what happens is a business will have like 4 or 5 data sources, and they want to merge everything in Azure, right, and create one single file. So for example, there are 5 different sources for like if I migrating the same database and then creating the pipeline also on the same structure. So there is no difference there, right? So this is how the mapping works. And right one, so there are a lot of steps in between. So we have to create new connections to source data sets, and then There are steps in between, but yes, this is the crux of how this happens. And then I will also, so you see there is a trigger over here, right? So basically this trigger is used to schedule the data transfer. Okay, so basically how you can, like, at what time you want this to happen. So it says that it needs to happen every 10 minutes. Okay, so the frequency of this data transfer is 10 minutes. You can adjust this to anything, right? Maybe like 1 minute. I think the minimum is 1 minute, but then you can like have your own schedule based on how often the data gets updated, right? So yeah, this is about the data factory pipeline. That is almost real time. Yeah. That's not streaming. That's not streaming, right? Streaming is the same instance, right? It's not even 1 minute. It's like as soon as something changes. So that's what change data capture is, right? Or like the CI/CD, continuous integration, and like the continuous digestion, right? So this is what is. But then to create this is a lot more complicated, because then it also involves Azure DevOps, right? Which is like GitHub. So